Insider. I'm joined by Coach Brian Oakes, Coach Todd Miller from Stone High School. Talk a little bit about last Friday's game against Long Beach and this Friday's upcoming game against George County. Coach, probably not what anybody had hoped for as a result from last Friday night.
No, obviously you want to be, come out on the winning end of that football game. It's always, good to start your season off with a W. But, there were a lot of positives and, there were a lot of things that we worked on this week and had it on film and watched film and made some corrections and, had some teachable moments from the game. So
we'll allow you to hold your tongue on it a little bit. Coach Miller and I, we were standing there by the sideline on the track, the call on the onside kick. There's no two ways about it. That ball hit a Long Beach player before he'd gone 10 yards. Coach, what did you think of that at the end of that game?
Well, the angle we were standing at, we couldn't see if it went 10 yards or not. The only thing we saw was the reaction from the Long Beach sideline and their players jumping up and down. And I knew something was wrong because our players just kept going backwards. And just talking to Coach Oakes, knowing he tells his players, if you don't go 10 yards, to go backwards. So, our sideline was confused. And, the call before that on the 2-point conversion kind of looked like a makeup call to me, but, spilled milk.
the only thing I'll say about it, we tell our kids all the time not to, leave or allow the human error element. You know what I'm saying? Try to do our best to prevent, those calls from happening. But, those guys are human and they are going to make mistakes. But you just hope that, when it comes down to a situation like that, you just hope that they're going to make the right call. And that right there, in my opinion, was just a blatant no call. I have, Cade Amaker and Clint Hatton and D. Arrington and those guys over there on that side of the ball. And it's obvious, after going back and that's one of the first things I watched, Saturday morning, and it blatantly hit that guy at 8 yards. And for those folks at home that may not know the rule, if it hits, a Long Beach player within that 10-yard, deal there, it's automatically our football. And you can see, clearly on tape that, just the body language from the Long Beach side, and then, our kids pointing, our ball that away, and they're walking off the field, and then the ref comes in and makes that call. But, it can't cry over spilled milk. It's done now. We just got to regroup, refocus, and we've been working hard this week, for the George County Rebels coming into town.
Coach, I gave you an opportunity to hold your tongue. You chose not to do so, I guess. Thank you. Let's go a little bit backwards from there. That was at the end of the game. It did prove very decisive. But let's go backwards. Let's go back to the first quarter, the first drive. 7 penalties on your team. In the first drive, you still scored, but 7 offensive penalties. A little further in the first half, 3 interceptions at the goal line. Those things taken care of, the onside kick becomes pointless. There's nothing to talk about anymore because it would have never been necessary. So, talk a little bit about what you've done this week to cut down on those human errors.
Basically, that's what you want to do in your first couple of games anyway. Obviously, you don't want to make those mistakes, the jumping off sides and the fumbles and the interceptions and that kind of thing. We had 3 fumbles in the game and got 2 of them back, and your first couple of games, you want to, minimize those mistakes each week as you go into your season. You're hoping you're growing and working out the kinks, especially in your non-district games. And, we just, focused, a little bit more on the little things, as any team would do, to prepare for your next game so you don't have all those mistakes.
You'll be home this week at AL Memorial Stadium taking on George County. Let's take a commercial break and we'll come right back and talk about the upcoming game.
Hudson Farm Supply at 336 Hall Street in Wiggins is your home for all things farm related. With feed, seed, fertilizer, farm clothing, horse tack, and pet supplies, including wormers and vaccinations, Hudson Farm Supply can meet your needs with a friendly, knowledgeable staff dedicated to the highest levels of customer service. If you have a farm supply related question and the staff at Hudson Farm Supply do not have the answer, they won't rest until they get it. proud supporters of Tomcat Athletics, Matt Hudson and Joel Miles invite you to stop by Hudson Farm Supply, sit a spell, and rehash this week's game.
One lamb billet, one crack, and 2 corn.
Thank you very much.
Come shop with us at Hudson Farm Supply.
We're back with the Tomcat Insider, Coach. We've talked about last week's game at Long Beach. Let's look forward to next Friday night at ALMA Memorial Stadium. George County's coming here. I was looking at some of their lineup. They've got an offensive line that averages 250. They got a defensive line that averages 240. They got some big kids over there in Loosedale ready to play some football, I'm sure.
I mean, obviously, I don't think they're any bigger by any means than the team that we just faced. In Long Beach, but they're a good football team. They're a solid football team. They have weapons, and Coach Jones does a great job with this football team over there. So we just been working hard this week, and we're going to basically find out who's going to win the line of scrimmage, because they're going to run the football. I really believe they're going to try to just pound us.
Mm-hmm. Coach, after watching a game film of Moss Point and George County this past weekend, what did you see that the Rebels do well? I mean, how were they able to stay with Moss Point?
They ran the football really well. Obviously, both teams there had some first game mistakes and that kind of deal. But I mean, they run the football well. They have 3 guys in the backfield that can tote the rock, and like I said, they block really well up front. So I mean, we're definitely gonna have our hands full on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball with the other guys.
They're much like the Tomcats this year in that their skilled players have got some experience. They got Lewis running the show at quarterback. They got Rico Carter, Adrian Bradley as running backs. How do you and then they got a fullback. It's not bad either.
Yes.
How do you get in there and contain that backfield? I mean, let's talk about how you're going to stop that running game. That's what's coming at you.
I mean, basically, we're going to have some guys, up front that are going to get tough. And just hope that, we can establish the line of scrimmage on their side of the ball rather than them establishing it on our side of the ball. And I think that's going to be the key is, can we basically stop them before they get going, kind of deal.
What if they have to resort to the air? Does Lewis have any receivers that he can go to?
Yeah, they got number 15. I'm not real sure right off the top of my head what his name is, but he can catch the football. They got a couple guys that catch football, but I mean, their bread and butter is running the football.
We talked about last week, we talked about the Rebels coming over this Friday. Let's talk about the Tomcats. Coach Miller, we said it over and over Friday night. Clint Hatton, the guy puts up almost 500 yards by himself, total offense. A little bit about your senior quarterback.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, our guys overcome, you revert back to what you were saying earlier, the 7 penalties on our first drive last week. I mean, I was impressed, that we were able to, kind of chisel away and continue to move down the field after all the penalties. And, it's kind of the same thing with Clint. He comes in there and throws, 3 interceptions in the first half, but, he keeps fighting, he keeps competing and just laying it on the line for us and to give us a chance to win the football game.
Yeah, and that was certainly there. Well, Coach?
Coach Oates, with that young line you have, Arrington only had 34, I think, yards rushing.
39, yeah, it wasn't a lot.
How do the Tomcats, how do we get our running game established where Clint had got to drop back and throw it?
Well, I mean, basically we're going to take what they give us, and then last week is, I guess everybody, we'd like to see D touch the ball more, but, that's what we say is if they focus in on one of our players, we feel like we have some other weapons offensively. And, last week we just didn't do a good job of blocking up front, run blocking. And, we just felt like that, we found some weaknesses in the secondary and we just exploited those weaknesses.
Lee Redeemer catching several long balls.
Absolutely.
Six catches, 161 yards.
That play looked open all night long.
Yes, it did. And Sherman didn't do too terribly bad. He didn't see as many balls, and he dropped a couple. I know, but I mean,
right.
You guys had some guys out there open, scampering around in their secondary. D at the end of the fourth quarter, there he takes a pass out of the backfield, 40 yards. I mean, he carried a couple guys for 10 of those yards, and he knocked a couple other guys down. the man's the real deal. When he gets the ball, George County's going to have to be zeroed in on number 10, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Coach, how does a game like that affect you the next day? I know we talked a little bit about it going home, but I mean, it was just the emotion of that game, seesaw battle the last 2 minutes. I mean, it had to just put a damper on the players and yourself as a coaching staff.
Well, I mean, me personally, I beat myself up. Just what could you have done differently, this, that, and the other. Laying in bed when you do get home after washing clothes and swapping film if you're able to swap film with the next week's team. But I think Coach Miller, I went to bed at 4 o'clock, I believe it was. Friday night, and I was at the office at 7:30 the next morning, just watching film and just trying to evaluate what went wrong and what we did and what we could do better and what we did good. The kids took it hard, and they'll bounce back a lot quicker and better than I would. But we've had a good week of practice, and hopefully we'll be ready to play on Friday.
Coach Miller, as you well know, it's not a 9-to-5 job, is it? Head coach of anything is not a 9-to-5 kind of job. I'd like to have been a fly inside that car on that ride home from Long Beach last week. That would have been interesting. We're going to go to another commercial. We'll come back.